What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Believe in Kentucky. Vinny Hardy alongside Eric Gershon for the Cat's Paws. And AG, we got a legend in here with us, friend of the podcast, one we know well. You were just on his show a minute ago. Dick Gabriel is in here with us. Gabe, how you
The
doing?
OG, AG and the OG.
Hey,
there you go.
stuff just writes itself, man. Look at that. So, man, Gabe, you coming in here fresh off of vacation, first of all, so appreciate that. And hopping on here with us. And you had AG on, the Big Blue Insider, so y'all already good and warm. So just got a good sweat worked up, sports talk wise, right?
Aaron's pulled in all different directions for now.
And Aaron, you mentioned it, man. You got you made some personal news available on the X/Twitter streets earlier. So, man, if you want to let everybody know that doesn't already know.
Yeah, look, it was a bittersweet decision. And first of all, I said it on BBI about an hour ago with Dick there, and it was totally a decision on my part. So I was not forced out the door. There's no bad news. There's a lot of bad news in the world in this field, unfortunately. So I want to make that known. Nothing like that going on here. So, but yeah, this is going to be my last week and a half at the Cat's Paws after almost 3.5 years. Again, bittersweet decision. I love everything about this job and everything about Lexington. I've been here for the better part of 8 years, met my fiance here, have now, in-laws here, and it'll always be a second home. I'll be here plenty. I'm getting married here in December. So, very bittersweet to be heading elsewhere. But, this time at our point in our relationship and where we are with things, we felt it was the right move with an opportunity that came up down in Florida to take over as the lead sports information director at New College of Florida, which is a NAIA program. And obviously, and my new employer, if they're listening, knows this. The goal is to eventually get back into the big leagues per se, whether it be in the SEC, the big time college sports, other maybe professional sports, whatever it might be. But it's a transition that I've been curious about. And, Matt May, who of course is the baseball SID at UK and number 2 for football, was in my job this time about 10 years ago and has made a similar transition to get all the way up to UK. So, it can be done, and I'm ready to kind of take this next step, and it moves me a little bit closer to some family as well. And 25 minutes from the beach, which is cool, but it is very, very much bittersweet. I'm going to miss the heck out of everyone here. When that first game at Kroger Field happens, I will be jealous of everyone there. There's no question about it. But so that's why I say it is very bittersweet. It's something we really dug our heels deep in to make sure we were comfortable making this move. But, we feel like it's the best for our little family that, we hope to, in the next couple of years, we start, with kids, and, you got to be able to afford those. So not saying I wasn't compensated, but, this one obviously puts us in a little bit of a better spot. And, we felt like it was the right decision. So very bittersweet. I obviously, Dick is one of the first people that gave me a chance in this business. I'm forever appreciative of him, and I'm glad he's on tonight. As one of our last Wednesdays, and you and Jalen have been with me every single week for 3 years. So I appreciate the heck out of you guys, and Daryl Bird, I can't thank him enough. He was great to work for, and I'm gonna let as long as all goes as planned, you guys are going to have another really good beat reporter that's going to be on there with Dick on Monday nights. I hope I'm still going to be watching and listening to every game possible and complaining, maybe not as much on social media, but now I could watch it a little bit more, not necessarily as a fan, but a little bit more from the TV perspective. I get to listen to Dick on the football calls and Tom more. So, there's those benefits as well. And, I'll be watching the Cats plenty, and I'll be up to date on everything. But, it's just going to be watching it from a different angle and starting something new here.
Well, it's real wise beyond your years, just the way you just laid out how you weighed everything, about to get married, looking to start a family in a couple of years. Threw in the beach, but as a person, close to family.
I had no choice. I had no choice to throw that out there.
Like you looked everything over and waited. So, man, props to you for that, and congratulations to you and the missus, and uh, just hope everything works out for the best. And you definitely put a lot of forethought into it. Everybody's gonna miss you, but
Where is this school?
It is in Sarasota.
Oh,
So
okay, good. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So I'll be living in Bradenton, very close by. Get to watch a lot of spring training baseball, which I'm
yes,
excited
see,
Oh,
about.
yeah.
I thought about that already. I was
Yeah.
like, he's gonna be right there with those Yankees.
He's
Yeah.
all over that.
Yeah, I'm all over that, baby. So actually,
Home of
so
Devin Burks.
yeah,
Mm.
that's right. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's really exciting actually. So the school is actually only in its third year in the history of athletics.
Wow.
So we're trying to really get, our name out there, and obviously my experience as a journalist trying to kind of promote our athletes in different ways that the school hasn't been able to do yet, whether it be storytelling, visual and written, connecting better with some of the local media down there to promote the kids and all that good stuff. But yeah, we're only in year 3 of athletics, and we only have 2 programs on campus. All the others, actually, you guys will both know the name, are both at IMG Academy. So, the baseball team plays a little bit of their, at least a couple games early on at Lecombe Park, which is the spring training home to the Pirates. So, it'll be really interesting to kind of help build that baby up down there. But it's a challenge I'm really looking forward to, and hopefully, we'll be able to do some good work down there, and it'll be a lot of fun.
That's awesome, man. Since we're on baseball, speaking of, um, we talked about it a few weeks ago, but Gabe, you were even closer to it than us. With this Kentucky baseball team, had you ever seen a team have so many one-run, narrow heartbreakers like this?
No. It kind of boggles the mind when you do the math. You start adding up, the number of runs that it would have taken to push this team to great heights this year. And Nick Mingione crunched the numbers on the Paul Feinbaum show, did it again on my show,
Yep.
counting up the pitches per game, and it's funny, Vinny, because several years ago I looked at one of the seasons that Gary Henderson's team had, very similar. There were like 5 or 6 games that went the wrong way, and each one came down to one inning, one at bat, one pitch, one moment. Turn them around. Kentucky had back then at least a share, if not the outright SEC title, a spot in the SEC tournament title games, just stuff like that. Hosting a regional. So yeah, baseball's crazy like that, but football can be like that. I think Aaron's going to go take care of Barkley.
Mhm.
What a great name for a dog.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
Football can come down, as you know, to 2 or 3 plays like that. So I mean, all sports can come down to a moment, but it just seems like there's more delineation in baseball just because of the way innings are structured and each pitch and things like that. But yeah, it just came down, Vinny, and they didn't complain about it because it sounds like poor mouthing,
Mhm.
but they could not keep their bullpen healthy. When you think about it, and I'm not laying this at his feet, but one of the guys down the stretch last year who got him to Omaha, pitched in Omaha, was Robert Hogan.
Yep.
The kid who transferred in from A&M and pitched his best baseball for Kentucky.
Mhm.
And he was unavailable almost all year.
Yeah.
What kind of difference would he have made? I
Yeah.
guarantee it would have made a difference in 2 or 3 games at least. So, yeah, it was nuts. It was crazy.
And in spite of all that, they were still right there. The game against West Virginia.
2 of them, 2 games
Yeah,
against West
yeah,
Virginia.
right
And
there.
they both came down to, I'm not saying that this was the what won or lost, but 2 critical errors, one in each game,
Mhm.
that just kicked the door open for West Virginia. And as a kid, I grew up rooting for West Virginia because my dad went to school there.
Oh,
I
wow.
grew up, 10 miles from Morgantown and Fairmont.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Kentucky, I thought West Virginia was good now, but I thought Kentucky was better, clearly better than Clemson.
Yeah.
Now,
Yep.
does Kentucky win the Super Regional? No.
No, they would have. It would have been the same exact thing that happened 2 years ago.
Exactly right. Minus Paul Skeens,
Mhm,
but
mhm,
it's another regional trophy in the cabinet.
mhm.
So, but that just shows you how, like Stoops, Ben Jones raised the floor, not just the ceiling,
Yes,
right?
no
Yeah.
question.
And, like, I don't know if there's stats on this, or probably is, but, you score 28 runs in your final 2 games and you split those games. That is hard to do, but, it's still, it ended terribly, and it's, bad taste in their mouth, but, you know, postseason play 3 years in a row, we're still seeing stuff we haven't seen before on the side of baseball, so
And quite frankly, those bats coming alive, that was my greatest fear going. I knew the bullpen was wobbly, but I thought it might be good enough to win that regional. I just wondered, are those bats going to go to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
or are they going to come in with a great approach? And they did. I was amazed, Aaron. I don't know about you, but I was amazed at
They,
how much at their at bats, at the runs they put up. Yeah, they ran themselves out of a couple of innings, but
yeah,
that
sure.
happens.
that's where they
Uh,
play, so
yeah, but I mean, extra base hits, home runs. Wasn't just small ball.
mhm, and
No,
he's adamant about that, and
Oh yeah.
he's on SEC Network, nope, it's everything ball, guys, yeah,
He actually called me at home one night or one day
yeah, hey, he
and
can't
said, or
take it.
texted me and said, we need to talk about this. And so we talked about it. And he's right. And I mean, he was 2 years ago in conference games, they were second in the league in homers. Second.
Yep.
So
now it's just kinda they've been put in this box and everybody just thinks, yeah, that's
that's okay.
and he doesn't care for that, but I think people perceived him one way a few years ago, and that's just automatically what they think, and that's not accurate, but
Well,
it
as long as the
happens.
recruits understand it,
Mhm.
but if opposing teams are constantly thinking about that, that's a plus.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So the loading up on the pitching, we talked about the wobbly bullpen, so immediate fix. You should go stock up on some pitching.
Right-handed pitching.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Yes.
the
Yes.
lefties they're going to lean on, who are the newbies, are freshmen, 3 left-handed rookies. So you got to hope they grow up quick.
hmm So your expectation, postseason play for a fourth straight year and beyond, based
Why
on what
not?
we see right now.
Why not? I would think so. And I think their success breeds success,
hmm
and I think kids are seeing, what they would like to do and how they'd like to play. And they're getting kids not just from mid majors either. They're getting kids from established programs through the portal.
No doubt, no doubt. So basketball, real quick, because I think we should end on football because that's what's about to happen,
Mhm.
and they probably can talk more about that, even though they haven't played a game yet. But yeah, we got guys having press conference sessions, Aberdeen and Trent Noah and Jalen Lowe and guys like that. So just your thoughts on how we are progressing into year 2. It'll be Big Blue Mass before we know it. So your thoughts on year 2 on the basketball side.
Aaron, you wrote about it today. What did you think?
Which one was it? I'm sorry, I
Well,
lost.
you wrote about Jalen Lowe on
Yeah,
today's.
Jalen Lowe. Yeah, I thought you said Potter for a second. I was like, what? Yeah, Lowe. So what really impresses me with him, one, and you guys are gonna love talking to him. he is he's just a soundbite waiting to happen. He doesn't hide much from you. But what I was really impressed with was he was telling the story about how, again, he didn't say exactly how old he was, whether it was high school, whether it was middle school, youth basketball, whatever it might have been. But he was talking about how he had a list that he hung behind his bed wall, and it had 8 schools that he wanted to get an offer from. And Kentucky was one of them, Kansas, Duke. He said blue blood, so I assume North Carolina was on there. But, he mentioned those 3 specifically. And he said, well, I didn't hear anything from any of them. And he, this is a kid who was a 4-star prospect, top 100 player, top 5 in the state of Texas, which we all know is talent rich.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like he was some scrub or had a Walter Clayton recruitment where there was hardly any recruitment. And Rick Pitino found him, turned him into a stud, and then he went and took a next step at Florida. This was a kid who was a pretty a guy who had a lot of interest out there, just wasn't necessarily from the schools he was hoping for. And he ends up at Pitt. Most guys are pretty happy to land in the ACC year one. And he said, no, the goal was to be at a blue blood. So, he works his butt off there. He has 2 solid seasons. And, by the end of it, he hits the transfer portal. He also declares for the draft. And one day, or he said a few days, a day, whatever it was, after entering the portal, Mark Pope is at his hotel room door in Minnesota meeting with him. And, that blue blood dream is kind of right there. So, really, I was really impressed with that story. I think that's I was telling Dick on radio just an hour ago, that's the good side of the transfer portal. Like, you don't love what's happening to the mid majors. You don't love the bidding wars that guys go and play, but you do respect the kids that have dreams outside of just getting there to some point in college basketball and, wanting to elevate themselves. And, he's, I think, a good example of the portal. And look, he's a player that, a lot of people discussed concern with the shooting and the splits, but you look at what he had to deal with at Pitt last year. He was their engine in all aspects. It wasn't just the distributor that he's probably better suited to be. So I think he's going to be a really good player here. I've said it from day one. I really like the fit, and he definitely has the right attitude and has the confidence you need to play at a place like Kentucky. So you guys are, like I said, you guys are going to enjoy talking and hearing from him, because he's got a really good personality to him. And honestly, really every guy that I've gotten a chance to see on this year's team that's new, I've gotten that impression. So it was a very impressive young man, I'd say.
You know what else is great, Vinny, is because they come in with the added maturity of 2 or 3 years behind them in the portal. They're more fully formed as young men.
Yes.
When they're freshmen, they're afraid. Most of them are afraid of saying something wrong, doing the wrong thing. They're coached, and that's good. I mean, they need some coaching, but they basically, I think it puts in their head that don't say anything that might be harmful or damaging. They want to speak in sound bites, and they become a little self-conscious. These guys, especially now, it's not after a game or going into a game. They just kind of sit back and we just have a conversation, don't we, Aaron?
We sure do.
It's less an interview than the more just guys and gals. Yeah, we ask them questions, but we're just talking hoops, So you get a different kind of comment or soundbite, which I kind of enjoy. And when they're ahead of the game going in like Jalen, then your world's ahead.
Yeah, and I think part of that is the type of players that Mark Poop recruits. And I don't think that, and that's not at all a diss on the kids that Cal brought in. There are a lot of great young guys we got to be around. I mean, some like Tyrese Maxey's still probably the best personality I've ever been around. I mean, and the list goes on and on. There's some really good kids that came through, when Cal was here. But these at both years so far, you just haven't gone away from one of these sessions. Like you said, it's never really been uncomfortable. It's never seemed like I have to do this type deal. Even after losses, like they've been very accountable. They've said a lot of the right things, and they have a chip on their shoulder. They're really prideful to be at a place like Kentucky.
You know what else? Not to interrupt you, but
no,
how many media people, with all due respect, hang around at Drexel, hang around at Fairleigh Dickinson, hang around, probably. A few in Pittsburgh. It's an ACC school, but it ain't like, I mean, you were there. I don't think you were back yet, but the TBT press conference, there were 8 cameras and 15 reporters in June.
TBT.
Yeah, for TBT. So like Sean Wood. Sean Woods kept going like this. All of this. It's Kentucky.
Literally the first thing that Jalen Lowe said when he sat down was like, damn, that's a lot of cameras.
Yeah. I remember when Severe Wheeler sat down.
Oh, yeah.
First time on media day. And I think it was Maggie Davis was standing next to me. And she said something like, what's been the difference between where you were and where you are now? And he just goes, all of this.
Yeah.
And I know we're looking at it from Kentucky's perspective, and of course, but if I'm Pitt, and I'm sure they want to, improve on the bad year they had last year, but all they've got to be hearing is how terrible they were. We're the reason Jalen Lowe shot so bad. We didn't have anything around him. we were just pathetic. Just, I mean, sure, they have their, I mean, if they have any kind of decency, any kind of intestinal fortitude to want to improve, but hearing all of this, with Mark Pope, well, I'm going to make sure he's had players around him to where he can be an efficient shooter. All the strays that Pitt is catching just for being so bad,
I know.
just in these media sessions. I mean, they got to be motivated to, like, my goodness, we got to get this rectified. But that's just my thinking. But
to borrow from Mark Stoops and everybody else, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
They just weren't very good, and he was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, he led them in nearly every category. So
he was dragging them as best he could.
That's right. That's good. That's a good term.
Yes.
Not carrying, dragging.
Yeah. I mean, he had everything about the Pitt Panthers was on his shoulders last year, so he should just feel free and easy.
Yep.
And no doubt he's going to enjoy. Aberdeen's over here. Oh, we got BG. JQ is healthy now. I mean, so he can probably really be a true point guard and just, play the game.
Yeah, and I will say, and this was another thing, you can go catch the rewind of BBI, and I said this, the one worry I have with this entire roster, because I think this can be a very, very good roster. The talent's there. I've liked what I've heard from, Sean Woods on your show, Dick, and on other programs. I've heard him talk about defense with this team. Guys were not saying that when they first got to watch practice last year. So, there's a lot to like there. But if Jalen Lowe goes down, I'm concerned because they opted not to bring in a second point guard.
Or foul trouble.
Yeah.
Or just as having a crappy night, which is going to happen. It happens to everybody. That concerns me because, Colin Chandler, we saw he's not a point guard. Jasper Johnson's definitely a better scorer, off-ball guy. Oway, maybe. He had to do it a little bit last year, but when he did it, it was kind of just get downhill, which, hey, he's good at getting downhill. So, I mean, if you have to, you have to. But so there's that one thing there. That's the one thing, which I do think, Jalen Lowe, we're talking about all the pressure that's going to be off of him. That part there still is. I mean, obviously, just playing at Kentucky brings more pressure in its own right. But that part of it, I do think he's still in the back of his head. That's got to be there because it's a real thing.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. So, yeah. So the excitement builds. We talked about it. We've talked about it several times, AG. Big Blue Mass will be here before we know it.
100 days.
I
saw that online today. It's 100 days away.
Man.
Yeah, it'll fly. Once it gets to that 100 point, it flies.
Will the football team keep our interest beyond Big Blue Madness, Gabe? That's
going to be tough. And unfortunately, some of the interest might be the heat that's cranked up on Mark Stoops this year. What is the storyline going to be? What can this team accomplish in terms of postseason? Or will the storyline be, are we one step closer as the BBN, as the media, to really digging into, well, of course, the fans will beat us to the punch big time. They already are.
Yeah, they already are. They're done.
So fickle, One losing season followed 2 winning seasons, but there were only 7 wins. Only.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought I'd hear myself say that. But
no.
Stoops, again, raised the ceiling, raised the floor, and now people are demanding more when the SEC has never been tougher, literally. With Texas and OU, and then all the money that's being spent, and now people have to spend more money on the athletes. So that's just another chapter to deal with.
So we keep hearing 1 year blip, and that's the phrase that they like. Some of us, I want to flip it because we've talked about the bad vibes, the look, and all the things we're seeing, and then Marrow leaving on top of that. If everything, question for both of y'all, if everything went great, it's best case scenario, the chemistry's great, the culture's great, you stay pretty healthy as far as football goes, as far as key players not getting injured. the offensive line clicks. Jagger Burton integrates with all these new guys around him. Calzada does well. Best case scenario, schedule's brutal, we know, but what could you all foresee the best case, absolute best case, things go swimmingly? What would happen? What would the record be? What are we talking about at the end of November?
Wow.
7 wins.
Ooh.
7.
Best case scenario.
I think that's
it's such a brutal schedule.
It's horrible.
And just like it was either last year before, the calendar, not just who they play, but when they play them. You got Ole Miss early. I mean, but on the other hand, you're healthier usually.
And you beat them last year.
Yeah. Explain that.
Yeah, that is. And you know what? They're not, like, on paper, they're going to be one of those teams that I'm not so sure. Like, they're kind of a weird one this year where they're probably a more winnable game than people give credit for, but that's not saying much, of course. But look, I think best case, I also think 7 is your best case scenario. And I think really the most important thing is if you're going to get to 7 and you want the fans to be, they should be happy with that, with the schedule. I'm not sure they will be, just because it's not necessarily like something that jumps off the page and it's like, oh, well, 7-5, we've been here. Like, we want to go to new heights, blah, 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 blah. But I think that if you're going to be 7-5, I think the key is you got to win some of these games at home. You can't keep losing at home. They haven't won an SEC home game since September of 2023 when they blew out Florida. They've lost, I believe it is 7 in a row. They've only won 2 SEC home games dating back to 22. And South Carolina and Vandy have the same amount of SEC home wins in Kroger Field in that time. So it's just they gotta reward these fans who pay their hard-earned money to go to individual games, to go to for those who have season tickets, especially now, which every school does. So I'm not giving UK grief here, but just raise the price. Like, they really need to reward these fans with some memorable moments inside that stadium. So if they're going to win 7 games, like, win that Ole Miss game at home. That would be huge. Honestly, the next, you have Texas coming in here. I don't think any of us are going to be betting on Kentucky that night. I know Tennessee has this ownership of Kentucky, but we all know they're a little bit, with that quarterback situation, they're not, coming in looking as scary as they did the last couple of years. And, Florida is much improved, but, Billy Napier still has a lot of pressure on him there. Like, are these games that Kentucky is going to be favored in? No. Is this a game that right now, if I had to predict the season, I'd predict them to win? Also, no. Are they like playing Georgia when they were at their absolute best under Kirby, or playing Alabama when they were at their best under Saban? No, outside of the Texas game, which I think is more comparable than those. I think if you could get 2 of those SEC home games and finish with 7 wins, that's probably the basic scenario with the schedule the way it is.
Ole Miss lost a lot when they lost Jackson Dart.
And they lost Jackson Dart. They lost that whole playmaking receiver room. They're all gone. So, Lane
but we've seen teams through the portal totally rebuild. So,
and Ole Miss does it every year too.
But Dart was clearly the trigger guy. And
I
again,
I hope he's the best quarterback in NFL history, Dick. I really do.
Kentucky just played not a perfect game, but as well as it could.
Pretty damn close to it.
At Ole Miss in a tough environment. Now, I think you were there, Aaron.
I sure was.
They had that stadium rocking, but Kentucky made plays when it had to, especially the long pass late. And just hung around.
Yeah, that's the best play of the season right there.
Yeah, got a little lucky on the ball that popped in the air, and Caddis caught and took it in the end zone. So right in front of me, and split second, I'm like, here we go again.
There we go again. That same place as 2 years ago too.
Yeah. So, but what's weird, Vinny, about and how it is doing podcasts. It seems like the intensity after a loss is much more than after a win. Mm-hmm. And I remember noticing this when I lived in Dallas for a couple of years. And I'm not a Cowboys guy, all due respect. You can see my loyalties. I am an owner. I am a stockholder,
That's right.
You have an NFL owner on your show right now.
That's right.
But the media in Dallas, I always thought it was really interesting. There were 2 sports talk shows, really 3, but 2 big ones, 2 really good newspapers, Aaron, the Morning News, and at the Times Herald. And If they lost, the coverage that churned that loss lasted through Thursday.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
If they won, the churn was only through Tuesday. Then they started looking ahead to the following game. So it just and back then the Cowboys, were still winning 2 out of every 3 games. But the losses just lingered in the psyche of the fan base. And we're seeing that here now more than when I first started covering football in Kentucky. That's a good thing because it means there's more interest, but it makes it more challenging.
Yeah.
No question.
Just chew on the loss all week long for sure.
Suffer.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah. That's it. You mentioned you were right there for the Catus almost disaster that finally went Kentucky's way. So what's your routine being a sideline reporter? Are there places where you try to go, and what's been your favorite stadiums to go to away from Kroger Field? Just what's your whole process?
Well, my favorite stadium is Sanford Stadium in Athens. I just like the setting. It's kind of down in a holler, if you will. You know what that is.
Yeah.
But it's just reeks of tradition. There are hedges down there, as everybody knows. There's hedges in a lot of places, but for some reason, Georgia's laid claim to that term. There's hedges at Auburn, But anyhow, I just like that one. Death Valley is more about the fans, LSU. It was cool going to Texas. I took a picture, had somebody take a picture of me in Bevo, all that, just the history of it.
Yeah.
Was so great. But my routine essentially is twofold. Number one, I try to stay ahead of the ball just so I can tell, and I'm close to the line of scrimmage, but I try to stay within earshot, literally, of the coach's box, because my job is to fill in the blanks that Tom and Jeff don't have. So if I can hear stuff and see stuff on the sidelines, we're painting that word picture, I can fill in. I don't try to be the assistant color man and regurgitate game note stuff. That's nonsense. That's just, justifying your job. No, I try to give people, listeners, what they can't get from the press box and, stuff that I might be privy to. There are injuries, obviously, and there's a routine you got to go through there. But I also try to listen to what the players are saying. Every now and then I can see hand signals. I'll see a quarterback give a slight hand signal to a receiver, and I'll toss that up to Jeff Pecoro and say, Jeff, what are they doing there? That kind of stuff. But and if there's a controversial play and I have a good angle, Tom Leach will throw it down to me without me whispering in their ears, hey, I've got this, I almost say, Gabe, did you see that?
So what's because, at halftime, you always got to catch the coach on the way to the locker room. What's the hardest time you've had coming up with a question? You've been there for Joker. You've been there for some good teams, some bad teams, some ups and downs. What's the biggest struggle you've had? Like, what do I ask this dude heading to the locker room that you can remember as far as that?
Well, some of the Bill Curry teams that were just getting thumped, it was hard. But you can always throw out there, Coach, what did you think of the first half? But that's kind of a lame way out.
Yeah.
The hardest, and my buddies still laugh at me, that my guys on the network, was Hal Mummy. He was the most uncooperative guy I've ever dealt with. Unprofessional when it came to this. And here's why. If it's Jill Arrington, if it's Michelle Tafoya, if it's, one of the women on this, it just seemed like it's always women on TV.
Yeah.
He couldn't give them enough time. There were times, Vinny, he would blow right by me without saying a word. I'd be like, oh, at least once he went, get away from me, And there's a quick story after the Music City Bowl, the one they lost, where where James Whalen went down. At halftime, he gave me some flippant answer, like he just read the scoreboard. Oh, it's 16-14 or something like that. I'm like, great.
Great.
So after the game, and I would go in. I was always in charge of setting up the equipment. Then I would sit there and listen to him talk to Leach. Well, this day I had a magazine in my bag, so I went and sat on the other side of the room and just read my magazine. He walks over to me, just kind of smirking. They lost, but he's like, Didn't like my answer at halftime, huh? I said, you know
What?
what? I don't really care what you say to me. I'll take a pie in the face. That's part of the job. I said, but it's listeners. It's your listeners. I said, you wouldn't do that to Michelle Tafoya or Jill Arrington. And I swear to God, we're in a
Wow.
small room. And he goes like this, are they here? And I took my magazine and I whacked his leg. I said, no. I said, it's your network, and I started to chew on him. Right then his wife walked up and said,
Of course.
was he mean to you or rude to you or something like that? And he kind of hung his head, like a little boy
Wow.
that had been caught with his hand in a cookie jar. And she scolded him a little bit. And he's like, well, I just can't be nice to everybody all the time. I'm like, buddy, you're getting paid a lot of money from our network to talk to your fans.
Yeah.
So Stoops has been tremendous. Loved Rich Brooks. I'll tell you what, though, I don't know if you remember this. Several years ago, a clock operator screwed up and cost Kentucky a chance to score at the end of a half. And I went to Rich and I said, Rich, what happened there? And he's like, and he started to say screwed or even worse. And he goes, homered by our own clock operator. And walked off. That was awkward.
Yeah. Back to you, Tom.
Here's one more moment on this. I'm glad you asked me this. So Mummy treats me like dirt, right? And that's fine. I'm a big boy. I can take it. Guy Morris takes over, right? Very first game. They're up on somebody. Not much, but we're walking off the field. And I ask him a question. And Big Guy Mo puts his arm around my shoulders like half a bear hug and is leaning into my mic and walks me off the field like that. Thanks, coach. Throw it back up. Tom pitches a break, and our producer, Mike Dodson, yells, could you feel the love? Oh, we cracked up, man. But God was great. He was trying to be the anti-Mummy.
Absolutely. To the fullest. What a difference a coaching change, man.
Yeah.
But Guy had waited on his chance to be a head coach.
He sure had. Kind of like Brian Snicker from my Braves. Just been, he finally been in the organization forever and finally gets to be the manager. Same thing with Gabo, for sure.
And I remember, I think Stoops has done a good job with the media. He's gotten better each year. Wasn't great at the beginning, but he was available and tries to be honest, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no question. He's not gonna entertain you like Mark Pope is, but he, like you said, I think he doesn't try to beat around the bush too much. I mean, he's very open with what he can be, and he makes it clear when he can't say something. So, and that's all you could ask for is honesty. And
how about Pope after a loss though?
Yeah, not as entertaining.
He's a different animal.
Yeah, he takes it. He wears it. He does. He is not a good loser, and that's good. I mean, honestly, you rather not that you want him to be quiet because it doesn't give us much, but I think it shows the fan base you mean business. Where, and again, I'm just using Cal as an example because he was the coach right before him. But Cal after losses, it would either give a long answer that had nothing to do with the question,
right,
or would just
flip it.
He just filibustered, and then he would leave after. Like sometimes he would be short, but in a different way. He wouldn't. Yeah. It was just brutal.
I got to go walk the dog or something.
I got to go walk the dog. Yeah, there's accountability with Mark Pope at least. So.
And they lose sight of the fact, Vinny, that we're the medium. They're going through us to the fans, to the guys who make the yacht possible. I like Calipari. Not that he didn't invent it, but when he said there's no crying on the yacht, that's what he told his kids. Well, who made the yacht available?
Yeah.
Who made the yacht possible? The fans. And we're carrying your message to them, not to each other, to them.
Is pensive the right word for Pope after the loss? I mean, he'll give credit, we'll give credit to Alabama, blah, blah, blah. And he'll kind of rush through that, but he's still, they played hard, they coached good. And then you can just taste like, just like a cat on a hot tin roof, ready to get,
he wants to get to that autopsy.
Yeah.
He wants to tear it apart and find out what went wrong.
Yep. He wants to, exactly.
For sure. You already mentioned that you're an NFL owner. I see the Packers hoodie back there,
I'm
and
also an owner of a thoroughbred racehorse that won the
Yes, you
Kentucky
are.
Derby
That's right.
Okay.
5 years ago. I bought him what's called a micro share. My
Mm,
kids bought me the share of the Packers, but there's a
okay.
program online called myracehorse.com, and you can
Yep.
buy a share or as many shares as you can afford of different horses. And I helped Channel 27 do a story on this program. It had just started up, and they said one of the horses available is running in the Derby tomorrow. I
Really?
got home from Spendthrift Farm and I thought, that's pretty cool. Got online, looked it up, bought a share. The next day, I think I had baseball. I wasn't at the Derby. I've been to somewhere between 45 and 50 Derbies, but I
Mm.
wasn't at this one.
Mhm.
So I'm sitting after the baseball game. I'm in the kitchen watching the Derby. And as they turn for home, whipping and driving on the front end is my horse, Authentic.
Oh,
And I'm screaming and yelling. I mean, I bet the Derby every year, but I don't go nuts. Well, this time I was. My wife walks in. She goes, "What are you yelling about?" I said, "We own that
that's my
horse."
horse.
And he wins. I got a nice
That's
picture
too
of
good.
myself at the farm a few days later, posing next to the roses and the trophy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man,
So it's all good.
I wondered how
That's
that would
awesome.
work if when you won, so you get to go to the farm. That's
I
cool.
did. Not
Yeah.
everybody does, but I just
Oh,
happened to
okay.
get to go.
Alright.
I was doing a follow-up interview, but they invited us to come out. There's like 400,000 people who bought into that horse. And the other part was we knew this going in. We did not get a share of the winnings because the horse had been sold, but the agreement was
Oh.
on paper, we get a share of the breeding rights.
Okay.
I've already made $59.86
Alright.
on breeding shares.
Yeah,
So
and
there
he
you
still
have
got
it. My horse is working for me.
his 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 and
Oh, the Packers.
his breeding career is still young. He's still got a lot
That's
more
right.
breeding to do, so, hey,
Exactly right.
that's
A Packers stock yields no dividends. I cannot sell it. I cannot sign it over to my kids. It's hanging on the wall right around the corner of my man
uh-huh,
cave. It
uh-huh.
just gives me bragging rights and the opportunity to be obnoxious.
That's
More
right.
opportunity to be obnoxious.
So, Packers and Cardinals, when was the first time you saw them in person and where?
Oh, first time I saw the Packers, I think in person was in '83 when I moved to Dallas and I
Mhm.
went to a Packers Cowboys exhibition game.
Okay.
Paid full price. And I
Yeah,
sat there watching going, who are these guys? Because you know how they might have been the third game where they're trying to figure out who to cut.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting up there and I'm like, man, maybe Lynn Dickey played one series at quarterback. And I said to myself, I will never pay full price for an exhibition game again. I've been to
No.
Lambeau once, but I've also seen him play in Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and Nashville.
Okay.
The Cardinals, I was an American League fan growing up, Yankees fan. They were starting to stink. Sorry, Aaron. In the
No,
60s. So
I
I
know.
switched over to the Orioles, which was great. Brooks Robinson, Frank Robinson, those
Mhm.
guys.
Mm.
So I'm rooting for the Red Sox in the 67 World Series because I'm an AL fan. But I'm starting to notice the Cardinals. Bob Gibson, Lou Brock, Mike Shannon, Kurt Flood, and greatest uniforms in baseball.
Mm.
There it is. And I thought, that is a cool team. That's my new team. And from that point on,
Wow.
and they go to the series the next year, blow it against the Tigers,
Yep.
win it in '82,
Mhm.
and then a little bit, but they've won since then. But yeah. And when you're a kid, you bounce around. Aaron, I'm sure you didn't being in Yankee country growing up.
No, I did not
But,
bounce around.
But
Yeah.
I
But
settled in.
there were definitely players and teams.
Yeah.
I were just like I
That's-
love Chipper Jones
Oh, yeah.
growing up. So.
Oh,
My
wow.
dad-
Okay.
Yeah.
My dad was
Mhm.
reading an article about the Packers. He was reading about Paul Hornung.
Mm.
And he said, my dad died when I was 8 years old. So he said, always root for players from your hometown.
There you go.
Louisville,
Yeah.
who's he play for? The Green Bay Packers. Green Bay. Green Bay must be like Tampa Bay. That's a real pretty name.
Yeah.
Not quite.
No, but they were good. So I rooted for them in the 60s. It was great.
Yeah.
20 years
Oh,
they
man.
sucked,
Hmm.
But it was interesting because for many, many years, I didn't know it was my dad reading about Hornung being suspended or coming off suspension. And I wrote about this back when we had a website. Aaron worked with it.
Yep. Yeah.
I was reading Hornung's autobiography, and when he was suspended for gambling, he wasn't sure if he would ever get to play again, much less when would he get to play. It was only out 1 year. And he said, I'll never forget when the commissioner called me to tell me I was being reinstated. It wasn't his official date of reinstatement, but it's the day he got the phone call,
Yeah.
April 17th, 1964, the day my father died.
Mm.
So back it up a year, Dad was reading about suspension, not when he was, coming back. So, and
Wow.
it's a kind of a bittersweet story, but my father gave me the Packers.
Man.
So being a Packers fan, I carry him with me on that. So,
Yeah.
he wasn't a big Packers fan. He was a Steelers fan, being
Mm.
from near Pittsburgh in
But,
West Virginia. But he gave me the Packers, and I'll take
mhm.
them.
Yeah. Went to Lambeau. Aaron knows this. A couple years ago.
There
Never
you go.
been.
Hallowed
Cow-
ground.
That's right.
Cowboys, Packers. Me and my buddy went up there, did the tour, went to the Packers
Isn't it
Hall of
great?
Fame.
Oh,
It as a fan of somebody else, it still is really,
Oh,
really
yeah.
yeah.
cool to see
Yeah. We
all of
did the
that.
tour as
Yeah,
well. Yep.
really cool. Going into the fourth quarter, the Cowboys had some insane record, 175-0 when they go into the fourth quarter, leading by 2 scores. Much like when Kentucky and Gonzaga played, Mark Hughes never lost
Never
when up by
lost. Yep.
16. That's where we were. 28-14 Cowboys. I'm having a good time in limbo. And then Aaron Rodgers works his magic and the Cowboys lose 31-28. So that was my Lambeau experience.
I got to tell you another quick one. My buddies who went up with me, one of my closest friends, and then two guys from his college days who were very friendly with me because we get together for Packer games and all. Well, I learned this when we're in the airport going up to Green Bay many, many years ago. Two of the other guys had gone on a drive trip through the Midwest and they stopped in Green Bay in the summertime. Well, the Packers were working out and they went into Lambeau Field. Well, there's Bart Starr coaching them, right? So at one point, they were going to film a commercial for Bart Starr Cadillac. And they pulled a car, that tunnel out there where you all probably walked in when you got a tour of the field?
Mm-hmm.
They pulled a car through that tunnel and they were going to shoot Starr standing next to it. Coach, we're ready for you. So he takes off his whistle, puts down his clipboard, and takes off his hat, puts it on the bench by the 50-yard line, and walks down to the other end of the field. One of my guys trots down, reaches over the rail, steals the hat, and they take off running.
Oh.
Later on, he said, I should have gone back for the whistle. But so I learn of this in the airport, and John produces the hat.
Wow.
It's what we call it now. We don't call it Star's hat, or it's the hat, because that's set on Bart Starr's head. We took turns putting it on.
That's hilarious.
And I don't know if you saw this, but you've got the stadium, practice field, and then there's an arena, basketball
That's
arena,
right.
where University of Wisconsin Green Bay plays. Well, the guy who owned that arena, I think he's dead and gone, huge Packers fan, and he had them put in a larger than life statue of Bart Starr. Did you see that, Vinny, when you went?
I don't.
I saw it when we went back in. Yeah, I do remember this.
So we posed for pictures and had the hat up on the head of the statue.
There it is. There you go. Yeah. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, great weekend, man. And we won. Come back one of the Lions in the snow, cold, windy, spitting snow. Perfect.
Yeah, absolute picturesque Green Bay day.
Yeah.
Sure. One last little quick thing. Aaron, I don't know if it's Big Game Boomer or it's Front Page Sports and that Front Porch Sports, the same one that picked us for their best football podcast.
All right.
They did a best burger spot in every college town, and according to them, it's Tally Ho. So I don't know.
That's the classic, but I mean that's just been around forever. I haven't been since I was in college, so I can't really dispute that. I guess
it's so respectable now, man. When I was in school back in the day, it was literally a hole in the wall. And it was just 3 in the morning. Fantastic.
Just to,
And here I
Really?
hate eggs. And the last time I ate eggs that I know of, I had been terribly overserved at a local establishment, and I went in there with some friends. I saw them making a Western omelet with all that stuff in it, all the veggies and all that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
That looks pretty good. So I ordered one. I started eating it. I'm like, oh man, I'm eating eggs, But otherwise, I love the hoe. But now, it's a nice place, very respectable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's transitioned through the years, Gabe,
It has.
but as we
Haven't
all
we
do.
all?
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely. So, man, this has just been a lot of fun, and we appreciate you, on fresh off vacation, like we said, but, got a mini
Back tomorrow.
vacation coming up. Yeah.
Back on,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
I'm in and
nice.
out, up and down,
So what's coming up on Big Blue Insider to finish the week, and what's the next week looking like?
Well, tomorrow I've got an interview I did in a garage with Jeff Pecoro,
There we go.
which is entertaining. A lot of football. If you like football, that's the way to go. And Friday, I'm rerunning the show with Cameron Mills when he
Okay.
came to the garage. So a
Cool.
lot of basketball on that night. And of course, he was Pope's teammate and close friend. And he goes to practice. So he's always very entertaining. Next week, we'll have more of the players. And Aaron, one more time. So,
We'll be there.
There you go. There you go.
Whatever comes
So
up.
two good ones to close out this week. I was on Feinbaum Monday.
Were you?
Presumably because they couldn't get a hold of either one of you all or anybody else.
I think they chose you, man. I didn't see it.
Or anybody else in Kentucky media. They just figured, well, let's just scrape the bottom of the barrel. We can't get a hold of anybody else. So, and I said the same thing. Braden Gall was in for Paul. I said the same thing that I said with you on Big Blue Insider. Similarly, just when we're talking about Kentucky football, we all just kind of, well, to me, it feels like, we're patient with the doctor. We know we got bad health, and we've had some tests run, and we got a good feeling that the test results are going to be kind of bad. And I hope I'm wrong, but that's kind of the
symptom
feeling.
Point to that.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we are with, best case, we 7, and you have to pull some major upsets to get there. Beating Vanderbilt has been a challenge here lately.
Got to beat Louisville.
And South Carolina is a challenge. All the teams you used to beat up on have flipped it on us. So it's going to take a lot of work. And so if we're talking 7-5, I hope we can get there. So
hey man, I hope they're bowling down in the Sunshine State because I think we'll be staying in for Christmas because we'll be coming up here for the wedding. So that'd be great. I hope they prove. Trust me. I hope they prove everyone wrong.
They can get a Florida
fans deserve it.
If they can get a Florida Bowl, that's a huge year.
Absolutely. I hope they are. I will be there.
I love the Music City Bowl. I do. I love going to Nashville, but I know people grumble now at the Music City Bowl. That's where we are with Kentucky football.
So, got to get back to the Sunshine State.
Yeah.
Playing Tampa for the first time since '99. That's an hour from me. Let's do that.
I enjoyed that trip.
We got screwed last time was the Music City Bowl anyway, so we don't need to,
You know what?
The last time it was the Music City Bowl was the Iowa rematch.
That's right. Benny got kicked out when he shouldn't have.
Yeah.
But you know what Benny said about that? Aaron, you probably heard him say that.
I think I remember this. Go for it.
He said it put Benny Snell's name on the map. He kind of became a national name.
I love it.
That day, and he wasn't wrong,
Yeah, and he backed it up the next year.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, but he did.
To hear Benny say that's not surprising. Yeah. That's his personality right there.
But he hurt the referee's feelings and got kicked out of the game.
Unbelievable. That was just so egregious. That was egregious.
Pac-10 refs, so
And you know what? And again, I wrote about this.
I mean, Pac-12 refs. I'm sorry.
Tom Leach every now and then will say, "Hey, could you ask the white hat how to pronounce his name?" Mm-hmm. And I did it that day because there was a misprint between the flip card they gave you guys upstairs and game notes. Mm-hmm. There was a misspelling. So I asked the guy, "Hey, ref, how do you say your name?" And he kind of gave me this look and this tone, like, "Don't bother me with that kind of stuff."
No,
I mean,
so he's
just like
having a bad day already.
generally, they're very appreciative. They
Sure.
want to make this guy was like, I'm like, excuse the hell out of me. So
How mommy told me about you. Get out of my face. Man, Gabe, this has been so much fun, and we appreciate you hopping on
anytime,
episodes
man.
with AG.
Appreciate it.
And everybody go and follow and subscribe and all that good stuff. And look, like I said, I say it every week. We've had Tennessee fans and Louisville fans get on here and give a little 5-star in a review.
Hey,
So
all right.
BBN, jump in here and just rate, review, and subscribe and all that good stuff. And we'll put a bow on this episode for the legend Dick Gabriel, the OG, for Aaron Gershon, the AG. My name is Vinny Hardy. It's been another episode of Believe in Kentucky on the Believe Network, and we'll holler at everybody later.